What zero-tolerance school stories do you have? Story 1. I didn't get a warning or anything, so I'm not sure if this even counts as zero tolerance, but here you go. After I'd beaten the original Half-Life, I started rooting around on the install CD and found that they had included Worldcraft in the disk. So I installed it and gave it a shot. Mapping very quickly became a hobby of mine. As a result, I got very interested in architecture and geometry, and started to take more notice of the way buildings were structured and laid out. I tried to get my friends into it, but I clearly took to it more than they did. But that was totally fine, since it meant I had a group of dedicated playtesters at my disposal. Anywho, I had mentioned something about the blocky, boxy design of our school, and that it would translate pretty easily into the grid-based, low-polygon world of Quake-based maps. As a few of us were walking between classes, we talked a bit about it, pointing out how to model each shape, where we could cheat and optimize things, where we might need to do manual VIS leaf splits, and so on, but didn't make any plans to do anything. That evening, I went home and blocked out about a 15 square feet area, and abandoned the idea after a few hours because the school itself was architecturally boring and pretty tedious to work on. It's important to note that I didn't publicly release this work in progress. That must have been in the middle or end of a week. Fast forward to the next Monday, and my biology class is interrupted by 5 or 6 police armed with pistols. They entered through all 3 classroom doors at the exact same time and must have known the seating arrangement ahead of time because they instantly focused on me and moved in extremely quickly without breaking into a run. 1 took my backpack at arm's length, 2 took me in that arm-twisting underarm hold thing where they kinda half carry you. I was never cuffed. When we got outside, I saw at least 3 more, 1 with a shotgun, 2 more going through my locker. When we got to the administration building, I was led into a room in the back and kept there for pretty much the rest of the day, and questioned on and off by various cops and guidance counselors and school psychologists. They wanted to know where I had hid my bombs, how many guns I had access to, if I had stashed extra ammunition anywhere, and reminded me repeatedly that if anyone had stumbled across one of the weapons I had hidden somewhere across the school, I'd be liable for anything that happened. They said on several occasions that they had enough to arrest me for conspiracy to commit and insisted that I just cooperate and give up my compatriots. Needless to say, I was scared crapless and terribly confused. Apparently over the weekend, the little discussion I had with a few friends as we were walking through the halls had been overheard and grossly exaggerated. The idea to make a level had transformed into me already having a level of the school completed. Placing entities such as doors had transformed into placing students everywhere. And doing it in the Half-Life engine apparently meant that I had built a planning tool. What the police had heard from their source was so vastly different from the reality I understood that I spent the first hour of questioning completely lost and confused, because I genuinely could not understand what they were asking about. Their source had apparently said that I had individually replicated the entire student body and thus asked who I planned on targeting first. I tried explaining how long hand-making 2,000 models and textures by hand would take, but they seemed to tune out every time I opened my mouth. Their source maintained that I had publicly released this map and that he had played it multiple times, at my insistence. There were other things. My dad had been in Paris for business and had grabbed me some French newspapers for me, which I'd stashed in my locker. Waiting for a show-and-tell opportunity in my French class, I spent probably a half hour of my questioning reassuring the police that this was, in fact, French, not some kind of secret code language that I was using to communicate with people. They took the newspapers and I never got them back. After the initial "holy crap, they're pointing guns at me" wore off, it was a very strange day. One of the cops, I don't remember who, must have eventually figured out what was going on, because he and I spent the last hour or so talking about Pixar and computer-animated movies. I understand that they sent police cars to my family members' houses and searched at least my parents' house, but I don't think they had a warrant. My dad was out of state at the time, and my mom did not take my side. I'm pretty sure she waived my right to have an adult or attorney present during questioning, and I know she told the cops to arrest me, and that she would not post bail. I know exactly who the police source was. I was good friends with him and his brother for a few years. I've not spoken to either since I was dragged out of class. I have no idea what I did to anger either or both of them. It's important to note that this was sometime after the turn of the millennium, but before September 11th. If it was afterwards, I am completely confident that I would have been on the receiving end of a proper SWAT team, and the entire school would have been evacuated. This was an amazing read, but wait a minute. You're telling me that a bunch of people who were qualified enough to be cops didn't recognize the French language? Just cops being cops, I guess. Story 2. Not quite zero tolerance, but my friend's sister grew up in quite a foul-mouthed household. With older siblings, her first words were "son of a blurted out empathetically for no apparent reason at the breakfast table, and when she was quite young, around first grade, some boy pushed her on the playground. She called him a He broke down and cried, told the teacher she had to eat lunch in the psychologist's office the rest of the year because she was a danger to the other students or something, and her mother had to come in. Mother told them that if they thought that was the most pressing issue they had, she thought they should look harder. They didn't go to the meeting. She's a savage in general. The guy got in no trouble for pushing her because she told on her first. She could have easily beaten the crap out of him. This sucks, man. Maybe your friend's sister should have said, "You stupid soft lump of fatty tissue and skin. I hate how you feel so good and remind me of the heavens. How dare you push me?" He would have cried. He'd be so confused and just leave.
Hey there. If you haven't heard already, a few friends and I recently launched Rufus Rugs, your go-to destination for premium custom hand-tufted rugs. Looking to add a touch of your favorite anime like Naruto to your space? We've got you covered. Or perhaps you're a die-hard Pokemon guy and want bus toys showcased for everyone to admire. No matter your style, we can bring your vision to life. Click the first link in the description to explore more.
Story 3. My sister almost got suspended in 3rd grade because my mom put a plastic butter knife in her lunch one day. I forget why she needed it for her lunch. One of the lunchroom aides spotted her using it and sent her right to the principal's office. They called my mom to come in. I am so glad zero tolerance wasn't a thing when I was in school, though. Some friends and I were getting bullied during the lunch break by the skater crowd. Yeah, I was and am such a dork, even the skaters picked on me. They thought it was funny to repeatedly peg us with hacky sacks, so I picked up one of the nice ones and my friend cut it open with his pocket knife, very undramatically sawing through with his 3-inch dull blade. He poured the beads on the ground and they stopped bothering us. That's when I learned it was okay to stand up for myself. Story 4. I went to a very, very, very crappy school district. I mean, this place is scum in so many ways. My little brother has ADD and mild autism. He's a very nice kid and always has been. I mean, he opens doors for everyone and compliments people he doesn't even know. Anyways, there was this kid in his grade who was the biggest jerk. He was mean to everyone, even the poor kids who were his friends. He always picked on my brother and his friends, calling them and everything else. One day, we got a code red. Everyone is stuck in their classrooms, and there had been a recent trend in girls fighting in the bathroom. So everyone assumed that was what was going on. No, I wish it had been a girl fight. I get called down to the office about an hour later. My brother and his best friend were walking to class. They were at the top of one of the stairwells when Butthole McButthead came up behind them and shoved my brother down the stairs as hard as he could. My brother tried to grab onto the brick wall to stop himself from falling and ended up dragging his hand down the bricks, messing up his hand. He still has the scar. He hit his face after doing several head-over-heels rolls down the stairs. His nose and lip were cut and his back was hurt so bad they thought he had broken it. He ended up going to the emergency room. Fast forward a week later. He's back in school and the principal calls him to her office. I don't know how this lady was ever allowed to work in a school. She made my brother shake hands with Butthole and make up. She said the alternative was both of them getting suspended because she did not believe my brother did nothing to provoke him from pushing him down the stairs, despite 2 witnesses telling her what happened. My brother has been bitter over that ever since. Also, when my mom found out he had to shake Butthole McButthead's hand, she went to the school and confronted the principal. The principal told my mom, "Well, maybe if your son wasn't annoying, it wouldn't have happened." My mom pulled her across the desk and a secretary had to pull her off her. That's messed up. The audacity for her to say that your brother is annoying. Good that your mom did what she did. That principal had it coming. Story 5. I once got suspended because a security guard found an unloaded airsoft pistol in the back of my truck. Let me be clear. The pistol, I mean those ones made of clear plastic, and by back of my truck, I mean behind the passenger seat of a crew cab with tinted rear windows. This security guard is really doing his job, eh? Making these suburban high schools safe for everyone. Also, I had a friend who got suspended for bringing a metal butter knife to school with his lunch. A knife is a knife, people. There can be no tolerance for weapons or logic and reasoning. You got lucky. A kid in my region got expelled for having a box cutter in his car. It was for work after school and he left it in the cup holder. I swear some of these rules are just funny at this point. So if you don't want to be suspended like this guy, you better hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Back to the stories. Story 6. This one is kind of like the other bully comments, but a bit more severe. So when I was a senior in high school, I got into my second physical fight ever. I was not a nerd, I was a loner and really disliked my school's administration for various reasons. I also went to a high school that was in my town full of rich, spoiled kids. You could tell because the student lot had nicer cars than the teachers. Anyways, I was raised by a single mother who worked her butt off to provide me with a good home and clothes on my back. Back to the story at hand. I was never friends with any of the athletes in my school, but didn't have anything against them either. Except for one, JW, his initials. This guy had bullied me since elementary school and never stopped for no apparent reason. For years, he constantly tried humiliating, intimidating, and generally berating me in front of others. So senior year rolls around, and he decides to try to impress some other kids in my grade by asking me to fight him during a lunch period, thinking I would say no. I usually ignored his BS for years and years. Finally, I had enough. I told him, "Sure, I'll beat your butt in front of all your friends." My answer shocked him and his friends, I guess, and he bragged for a solid 2 minutes claiming he would rough me up so bad I wouldn't be able to walk afterwards. I have my few friends gathered around us at this point. Little did JW know, I had taken kickboxing courses for around 3 years until recently. He swung first and I ducked, then I hit him hard. He went down and I got on top of him and started destroying him. When he started blocking his face, I went for his ribs. Eventually the fight broke up and he was crying. We all go back to class, me pumped with adrenaline and thinking my left hand might have a broken finger or two. I was in math when I got called down to the office. Neither of us ratted the other out, but somehow the school saw the whole fight on camera and even saw him swing first. We both got suspended for 3 days, much like other comments I see, but that is not the end. On my first day of suspension, I am home alone and hear a knock on the door. It was a woman I had kind of recognized but couldn't put my finger on it. I answer the door and start getting screamed at by this woman. It was JW's mother. She says she's going to sue the crap out of me for attacking her son who did not provoke me in any way. Her husband is a lawyer and they're a very well-off family. I am by no means poor, but I still had a part-time job and paid my own way for many things. I called the police on her since I closed the door in her face and just walked inside. She still stood on my porch screaming. All in all, nothing even came of any of this, and her threats were empty. Plus, there was the fact that the video of the fight showed him verbally abusing me and throwing the first punch. I never got messed with by any athlete again, and eventually graduated. Story 7. My school's response to everything was to suspend you. These are all personal experiences I went through. My high school principal had a severe obsession with what I wore. He would always stop me in the hallway on the way to class to point out, my clothes are too revealing, tell me to lean forward for a chest test, and would send me home for disrupting the school. And after 3 strikes, you were suspended for 3 days. I never even wore revealing clothes, unless you consider a button of flannel, tank top, and jeans revealing. I mean, I was 14. 50-year-old man should not be concerned with the non-existent cleavage of a high school freshman. If you were tardy to school or to class more than 3 times a semester, you were suspended for 3 days. If it happened again, you were suspended for 5 days, and so on. Because the best way to punish someone for being late and missing out on class is to cause them to miss 3 whole class days, rather than the only few minutes they were late. If you took too many sick days without a doctor's note, you were suspended. You missed too many days. How about we cause you to miss even more? Not everyone can afford a $300 doctor visit to confirm you had a terrible cold. If you missed too many total days of school, suspensions, sick days, tardies included, you were suspended. I know this because I missed a total of 30 days of school thanks to being sick and previous suspensions, and whenever I tried to come back to school, they would suspend me for 3, then 5, then 10 days. When I pointed out the stupidity of it all, they just quoted, "We are a zero-tolerance school, and we do not support truancy of any kind," before handing me another suspension slip. At least I got to watch my dad call the head principal every name in the book. That principal of yours is a perv. Chest test? Come on, man. Anyone who hears that knows we got a creep on our hands. We are a zero-tolerance school. Yeah, zero tolerance for common sense. Story 8. This was 10 years ago. My cousin, 1 grade lower than me, got into a fight at school. Zero tolerance policy says they're both suspended. Attached to this policy is if a student is involved in 3 separate fights within their time at the high school, then they were expelled. Within 2 weeks of my cousin returning, one of the guy's friends started a fight with my cousin. They're both suspended. A few weeks after he returns again, another friend of the original kid starts a fight with my cousin. In each situation, the other kid threw the first punch. Zero tolerance each time means it didn't matter. That is how children outsmarted the zero tolerance policy, and why my cousin graduated from a private high school. Story 9. When I was in year 10, grade 9 for Americans, we all had to line up to go into the dinner hall. For whatever reason, they put the menu with what they were serving that day at the front of the queue, so I walked to the front to read it. As I was walking back, a tiny 8-year-old kid shouted over to me, "Hey, stop trying to cut in line, you butthead." I just told him to screw off and mind his own business, as it's the kind of school where if it looks like you're giving in to a younger kid without fighting your corner, you won't hear the end of it. Then the little dude rugby tackled me, but he was too small to knock me over, so I just kind of stood there awkwardly as he tried to kick me. After a while, I'd had enough, so I grabbed him and picked him up, put him against the wall where he was standing before, and turned to walk off. The headmaster was standing right in front of me, and he'd been watching the whole thing. We both got sent to the reflection room, which is like a higher form of detention. The only time I got in trouble was for trying to walk away from a fight started by someone half my size who I probably could have hurt if I wanted to. Story 10. There wasn't really a zero tolerance thing back then, but school was over. I was starting my walk home and a friend runs by and drops his bag by me and yells me to carry it. He was going to play hockey after school, so whatever. Nothing of circumstance came of it. I never heard where he was even running off to. Next day, the teacher is all pissed off. I went in to see the principal and it turns out my friend was trying to pick a fight. Mind you, apparently all he ever did was run after someone but never even got close to them, not even the same block. There was no fight. This happened all outside of the school, so naturally my friend was suspended for a week plus remaining days in that week. And because I carried his bag, I was an accomplice in the fight, which never happened. I was suspended for the remaining days in that week. There was like a 2 to 3 day vacation for me that I was happy to take. It was all crappy rainy days, but I was happy to leave. So basically, you got suspended for holding the bag of your friend who was in a fight that never even happened. That makes perfect sense. Story 11. When I was in 10th grade, I was eating dinner with my family and my dad accidentally spilled his beer all over my shirt. No big deal, so I go upstairs and take my shirt off for the night. The next day while I'm getting dressed, I see that I'm out of clean shirts to wear. So without thinking, I grab the shirt from last night and put it on, eat breakfast, and get out the door. The day was pretty normal until I was called up to the front office. I wasn't really a bad kid or anything, so I wasn't too worried. Once I arrived, the principal informed me that another student told him that I smelled like beer and assumed that I had been drinking. I told the principal about what happened last night and assured him that I had not been drinking. He tells me that it still counts as bringing booze into school grounds, and for that, I was suspended. Story 12. This one was getting ready to shove his girlfriend down the steps, but I shoved him out of the way at the last minute. This gave her the opportunity to escape and go to the principal. After giving this guy suspension, he turns to me and says, "I'm out for 2 days." I put up a big enough fight, however, and was incredibly bold. I let him know that I was angry enough at him for even considering that, and I asked, "Sorry, I saved her from getting hurt and possibly having to go to the hospital. What if that would have been you?" It was then that he realized he was wrong. I fought, and I won. The school would later drop their unconstitutional zero-tolerance policy because of my bold stance against it. That felt amazing. Story 13. I don't have a story, but I was blamed for a fight that happened on a weekend that wasn't even off school grounds. This kid, who doesn't even go to my school, who has a name really similar to mine, got in a fight with some kid at my school. So naturally, they thought it was me. Thankfully, a couple days earlier, my friend told me about said fight, so I was able to provide some background information to get myself out of blame. But they took me to a friggin' room with a school cop and some other people, and they were treating this like a massive deal. It's a fight that happened on the weekend at a skate park, and one of the kids doesn't even go to the same school. Why are you meddling in on their business? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you'll love people who ran into the weird kid from school years later. How did he or she turn out? I could not believe story 1. It's crazy. Catch you on that video.